Today's lesson is a mid-chapter review that also allows us to prepare for tomorrow's quiz. In the first two questions, they're asking for us to find the slope of each of the following lines. Technically, what we know is that slope determines the way that the line is slanted, and there's going to be a numerical value associated with that slope. So in question number one, before I can determine the slope, I have to find two nice points that the line passes through. So I can see one nice point here, and I can see another nice point there. Now, there might be other nice points somewhere in between. Perhaps some of you look and see that this is a nice point. It technically doesn't matter if you count from the first point up 4 and over 6, up 4 or over 6, or if instead you count from the first point to the second point, the one that's in the middle, and you go up 2 over 3, because we know that when we reduce 4 over 6, we end up getting 2 over 3. So either way you want to count, as long as you're counting between the points, you will end up getting the same answer. If you get the 4 over 6, you just have to remember to write it as 2 over 3. In question number 2, this line is a vertical line drawn on my graph, and we know that we classify vertical lines as Vux lines, and the middle letter tells us about the slope. So because it's a U, in this case, the slope is undefined. Any vertical line has an undefined slope. When you go to the next couple of questions that are here, they're asking for you to graph each of the following. And it has a reminder here of don't forget to label. So there's a couple things we need to talk about with respect to the labels. There's two parts. Number one, you have to make sure that you label the axes, the x-axis and the y-axis. And number two, you have to make sure that you label the line. We can't label the line until it's drawn on our graph, so we'll come back and do that at the end. So for question number 3, there's two ways to do this question. Number one, you can say that what this is telling you is when you find 3 points to graph this line, all 3 of those points will have a -4 for their x value. The y values are ones that we can pick. So maybe we'll say that it's going to be -3, 0, +3. So when I plot those points, -4, -3 goes here, -4, 0, and -4, +3. So when I look at that, I can see that those 3 points are going to end up making a line when I go through and connect them. So in this case, I'm going to take my ruler, get it set vertically so that I can connect those points and draw that line. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that line, move my ruler out of the way, and my line has the equation x equals -4. And again, label the x and y axis, and don't forget to label that line. The other way to graph this line, and some of you may find this easier, is to say that because this equation only has an x in it, it's considered a Vux line, which tells you that when we draw it, we're going to draw it vertical, which we did, and it should cross that axis, the x-axis, at -4. So if I took that into consideration, I would say here's where -4 is on my x-axis, and I would draw the vertical line that passes through there, and I could see that I would end up getting the same line. So if you don't want to do this table and you want to memorize that x equals -4 is a Vux line, which means it's going to be vertical, that would be a nice shortcut for you to use. When I go on to question 5, I have 2 options on the way that I do this one as well. So what this is saying is that if y is equal to 5 and 5 alone, then when I go to get my 3 points, all 3 points are going to have a y value of 5. We get to pick the x values. I'm going to space them out a little bit, and I'm going to pick -3, 0, and 3. When I get to this point, it's just a matter of plotting those So I'm going to plot those points. I have negative 3, 5, 0, 5, and 3, 5. And I know that when I go to connect them with my ruler, I'm going to be drawing a line that's horizontal. So I'm just going to take my ruler here, make it horizontal, line it up on here, and draw that line. So there's my horizontal line. And the equation of this line, y equals 5. Again, when you label the axes and you label the line. Some of you may prefer to use the little shortcut with this, where you say, you know what, I don't think I need to go in and make this table. I know that if there's only a y in the equation, it's a Hoy line, which means that I should be drawing that horizontally, which I did, and it crosses the y-axis at 5, the number in the equation. So you could say, here's where it crosses the y-axis at 5. I'm going to draw the horizontal line that passes through that. So if you prefer to use that shortcut, that would be fine as well. On to the next page. When we get to these questions, it says in number 5, find the slope of the line between those points. It's our job to know that when they say find the slope of the line, we should be using slope formula, change in y over change in x, or y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to subtract the y's. So it's negative 8 minus negative 2. Subtract the x's. That goes on the bottom. And then I'm going to remember that when I do this, if there's two negatives next to each other, they cancel out, which is going to give me on top a negative 6, on bottom a 2, which ends up giving me a slope of negative 3. If you want to write that as negative 3 over 1, you can do that. In question 6, it's the same kind of question. They're telling us to write the equation of the line. Or I'm sorry, I take that back. They're asking me to do the slope of the line. And we know that slope, change in y over change in x, subtract the x's, and then on the bottom, subtract the y's. So 6 minus 6, 8 minus negative 4 gives me 0 over 12. 0 over 12 is 0. So this line has a slope of 0. As a side note, if the slope is 0, that means that it's a Hoy line. So when I go through to graph this, it should end up being a horizontal line on the graph. Another little side note, any number over 0 will turn out to be undefined. So if by chance you end up seeing a question with a number over 0, the slope is undefined. Question 7 is also a slope question. Some of you may say, how is it that I know that that's a slope question? And I can see that it's a slope question because the word slope is right there. So this is the x and y and x and y, and that's m. So they're telling me in this question to use the slope formula. I just have to remember what goes where. The number one thing that tends to get forgotten is that this is telling you that right here you're going to put in a 2. Because the right side of that equation is an equals, what I will do a lot of times is put that 2 as a 2 over 1, and then I'm going to subtract the y's, so it's k minus negative 1 over, subtract the x's, 4 minus 1. And then I'm going to go over here, so I have 2 over 1 equals k plus 1 over 3 when I simplify. Some of you may wonder where the plus came from, and that came from change, k plus 1. And when I get to this point, I'm going to cross multiply. 1 times this whole thing, k plus 1, is k plus 1. 2 times 3 equals 6, minus 1 from both sides, and I end up getting that k is equal to 5. So k equals 5, and that is what they were asking me for. The value of the, actually, I guess this should say k in here. I didn't catch that that was a mistake, but they're asking for the value of k. So just make a change to that question. I know that's what they were asking for. Question number 8 is telling us now to make a little bit of change to what we're doing. We are writing the equation of a line. Please remember there are 3 kinds of lines. There's slanted lines, Hoy lines, or Vux lines. Because this one has a slope of 5, negative 5, in other words, it's not 0 and it's not undefined, I know that this is going to be a slanted line, which means it's going to take the form y equals mx plus b. This question was especially nice. They're not all this way, but this one was especially nice because what they did is they told us that it crosses the y-axis at 6. That's their way of telling us that b is 6. So we have our b value, we have our m value, and all we need to do is go back and substitute in. So my equation, when I substitute, slope of negative 5, y-intercept of 6. And this is the equation of the line. In question number 9, we're asked to write the equation of a line again. I can't start writing the equation until I determine the slope. The slope here is 2. Because the slope is 2, that tells me that this will be a slanted line, which means that its equation should be y equals mx plus b. Very nicely, they did tell me what the slope is, so I know I'm going to be putting a 2 in here. But they did not tell me the b value. So I have to do a little bit of work to find b. And the work I'm going to do is by going on the side and writing down y equals mx plus b, and substituting in for every letter except for the b. So, is there a legitimate value I can put in for y? Absolutely. When they give me this point, x, y, they're telling you that you're allowed to put negative 4 in for y. Is there a slope that we should be using? Absolutely. They tell us the slope is 2. Is there an x value? Absolutely. When they give you the point, they're giving you the x value. So negative 4 equals negative 4 plus b. When you add 4 to both sides, you end up getting that b is 0. Which means when I go back to write the equation of this line now, I have the 2 that they gave me, and my b value is actually 0. So I could write my equation like that, or we know that if we add 0 to anything, it stays the same, so you might just want to write your answer as y equals 2x. This is probably what you would see on an official answer key, but I would not take off if you left the plus 0 on there. Question 10. You'll notice that it's the same exact kind of question when you look at it. It's telling you to write the equation of the line. You cannot write the equation of the line until you determine the slope. So I have to do slope formula on the 2 points that they give me. So in this case, when I substitute in, I get 6 minus negative 2 over 0 minus 2, which gives me 8 over negative 2, which gives me a slope of negative 4 when I reduce. That means that my line is slanted, which also means that my line has to be in the equation y equals mx plus b, but I have not yet found b. So in this case, I have to do a little bit of work to find b. That means that in the equation y equals mx plus b, I have to substitute in a value for x, y, and m. I can pick either the x and y 2, negative 2, or the x and y 0, 6. I'm going to pick my choice to use 0, 6. The y value then is 6. The x value is 0. Slope negative 4, because we just calculated that. So I have 6 equals 0 plus b, so b is 6. So when I go back and take a look at what I have a b value of 6 and I have a slope of negative 4. When I take those 2 pieces of information, I'm going to have y equals negative 4x plus 6 as the equation of my line. So that is the equation of the line that will pass through those 2 points. Number 11, write the equation of a line with a, here's the key thing, slope of 0. As soon as you hear slope of 0, it means that you have a Hoy line. If it's a Hoy line, the only letter you see in the equation is y. So it's going to say y equals, and then I look to the point to say which of those two is the y value. Well, we know the second one is y. So in this case, y equals 6. That's the equation of our line. When we go on to question 12, it's write the equation of a line. We have to say, is it hoivux or slanted? As soon as we see an undefined slope, we know that it's a Vux line, which means the only letter it has in the equation is x. So x equals, and I have to determine which of those is the x coordinate, which we know the first one is. So x equals -3 is the equation of this line. So sometimes they're Hoivux lines. You just need to be a little bit careful on that.